have some various topics regarding India, Malaysia, and Singapore. I'm a retired college professor. I taught world history and cultures at the University of Phoenix, at the Utah campus, and at the San Antonio campus. Been doing this cruise thing on different ships for a while, and it's a great opportunity to meet guests from around the world. Anyone here from the UK? Oh. Whereabouts? London? Back there? Manchester. Yes, ma'am? Okay, I'm from Las Vegas. Now bring that up. The last slide will have to do with a UK cultural thing. So today we're going to talk about the Malabar Coast, specifically Cochin or Kochi, spelled two different ways, and how the spice trade got started, why these foreign people were coming to Western India to get involved in the spice trade, and the different cultures that they brought with them and how that's developed into modern India, and they're the way they are now. So let's go back to Alexander the Great, 4th century BC, about 2,400 years ago. And there's a story about Alexander. Typically, when armies were out and they would gather around the campfires at dinner time, you'd take a piece of meat, stick it on the end of your sword, stick it in the fire, and cook it. One day, Alexander had a thought. He took his piece of meat, shoved it up to the hilt on his sword, stabbed it vertically right in the middle of the fire. When you have the meat on the end of your sword, all the grease just drops off into the fire. When you stuck it in the way Alexander did, the grease would run down the side of the meat and soak in, give it extra flavor. Meat is still cooked that way in the Middle East. It's called Iskender. It's Turkish or Arabic for Alexander style. So we can take that story one step farther. Alexander sitting around the campfire at one of his campaigns. He goes to stick his meat in, and one of his lieutenants says, "Sire, wait a minute." And he pulls out this bag of a mystical black powder. He sprinkles it on Alexander's meat. Alexander sticks it in the fire and cooks it, takes it off. He says, "This is wonderful, I must have more." Alexander has discovered pepper. So we don't know if that part's true or not, but it makes sense. So we have spices. Been around a long time. We've had traders from the Middle East. We called it the Near East back then, but the Gulf area, the Levant, have been traveling overland to India from about 4,000 years ago, 2000 BC, bringing these spices back to the West, to the Romans, the Greeks, and improving their food, making it taste much better. Different spices involved. It's a little bit blurry today. Peppers, cinnamon, cardamom, ginger, turmeric, nutmeg, and cloves were the popular ones coming from Southeast Asia and South Asia, particularly India. Here's a picture from a spice market. This particular one's in Istanbul. So piles of these precious powders that would enhance the flavor of whatever you were cooking, make you a hero to whoever you were cooking for, especially if it was a king, a shah, a sultan. And bartering. 1,000, 2,000 years ago, bartering for spices in the marketplace. The Arabs were involved in the trade. The Phoenicians, who we now call Palestinians, Phoenicians ran the sea trade in the Mediterranean. They would get the spices from India, come over to Rome, sell the spices to the Romans. So it's very popular. And you think, why would someone bother getting a pound or a kilo bag of pepper from India, bringing it to Rome to sell it? Give an example. If you paid $1 in India for this bag of spice, you can sell it in Rome for $60,000. So quite a profit motive involved. And of course, you want to keep it a secret. Where are these spices from? I want to go get them myself. I don't want to pay you to do it for me. So they'd come up with stories, how it was impossible for you to go find these spices on your own. And if you could even find where they were, you couldn't get them. Sinbad the Sailor from the Tales of the Arabian Nights had the story about mythical winged creatures with long talons would attack and kill you if you tried to get to the spices. One of his stories is he would take donkey meat and set it out in the field. The nests of these giant winged creatures were made out of these different spices. And when they flew off to get the donkey meat, his men could climb up and get these nests and bring them down. Or sometimes part of the nests would be stuck in the claws of these creatures, and as they flew over the army for Sinbad and his men, they would fall down and he could capture it. And of course, if the creature caught you, it would ruin your day. They had stories of where cinnamon was in deep glens, deep canyons, narrow canyons, filled with poisonous snakes, like king cobras or worse. And if you tried to go down in these canyons to recover the spices, the poisonous snakes would get you. Sometimes the spices would be growing in a shallow lake, small islands in a shallow lake. If you tried to go out and collect the spices to harvest, again, some kind of winged creatures, sea serpents, something was going to get you. So using the fear factor to keep others from going out and finding these spices, which in truth, all you had to do is walk out in the jungle and harvest it, or pay a local person a very paltry amount of money to go collect it for you. So we have some various ships. This is a mosaic of an ancient Roman ship involved in the spice trade. We believe this is what a Phoenician ship would have looked like with the colorful sails. And an Arabic dhow. Did anybody see any dhows while you were in Dubai yesterday or day before? They're still out there, aren't they? Been around for a long time. Most recently used in the pearl trade, now mostly for tourists. But that was their way of shipping, getting across the ocean, the Red Sea, the Arabic Gulf, to get involved in their trade. One of the problems with the trade, you could sail to India, you could get back to Egypt, and then there's land. There's a land crossing you have to go across, and then at Alexandria on the Mediterranean, you could load back on a ship to cover any of the ports in southern Europe. So the Egyptians would be collecting money. You land at their port, Port Said or something. You have to pay to be at their dock. You have to pay their longshoremen, their stevedores, to unload your ship, load the caravan, go across the desert. You have to pay to unload the caravan, load the ships. So the Egyptians are getting a cut out of all this. So that's their profit motive. Once the Romans took over, about 80 BC, 100 BC, in that ballpark, they owned Egypt. So now they didn't have to pay the middlemen. They didn't have to pay the taxes because they were Roman citizens now. But still the problem of unloading the ships, putting it on a caravan, a couple days across the desert, off the caravan, back on another ship. This trade, once the Roman Empire fell, about 1,500 years ago, the Arab traders again picked up the slack, kept up the same route. Now Egypt was a vassal state of the Arabs. So the ships would come, the Arab ships come from India, the same thing, land in the Sinai, overland to Alexandria. So here's some of the ancient